Corruption in Brazil, right? When I talk to folks the last few days and I ask them about the history of Brazil, one thing everybody tells me, Mr. President, is the corruption in Brazil, the history of it, what's happened. I think Lula said in a documentary I was watching, he said, if Jesus came to Brazil, even he would need to make an alliance with Judas, okay? That's what Lula said. That's the level of corruption. You watch this documentary and you're seeing Lula being linked to the apartment that he took, which he gets 9.5 years, then they raise it to 12 years. Then when they're investigating everybody, they say, hey, this money that was paid, you guys were taking 2 or 3% as a side money. And then multiple politicians said, yeah, that's normal in Brazil. We've always done that. It's almost as if corruption is normal in Brazil. We take some money on the side. If we give you a deal, we should get some money here. And then once, obviously, Lula gets in trouble, 4 months later, his wife has a stroke and she passes away. And even Lula was criticized for saying, I never took the apartment, my wife did, and then he had to change his position a little bit. Last night, I'm with your son, Eduardo, and, you know, a couple of the people at the table, they're telling us how there was a prison in Brazil that during the military regime from 64 to around 1985, when people would get arrested, you know, regular white collar crime would be in jail with politicians, would be in jail with the mafia, would be in jail with murderers, with criminals. And so during that time, they were training each other, which was the politicians were learning how to commit better crime. The other guys were learning how to make money more. But from your perspective, why do you think, no matter who I talk to, they say the level of corruption in Brazil, it has a whole different level than other countries?
Okay, the prisons indeed happened, but this doesn't justify it. The prisons don't justify this improvement. It really doesn't. All right? And Lula just says that because he's trying to find a way to justify the corruption that happens in his own government. Because we didn't have any problem like that during the 4 years I was president. I had no reports of corruption with 23 ministers. I had dozens of state-owned companies. I had 5 official banks, and we had no problem at all. Now, when you start your term and to gain political support, you hand over public assets, that's what's going to happen. You know, even a saint would end up engaging in corruption. And we all know that Lula doesn't set a good example for something different to happen. So we did something different. The state-owned companies, which were always running at a loss, started making billions in profits with us. Today, they go through billion-dollar losses. The pension funds are out there breaking everyone. And now we have 6 million people. People who are active employees, retirees, and pensioners who are increasingly seeing their future, you know, they are in the dark. They can't see any perspective for their future regarding their income. Lula placed someone to manage the pension fund, someone who was already convicted in the past concerning that same pension fund. The Postal Service pension fund, for example, back then with Lula and Dilma, used to buy paper from Venezuela, from Chavez and Maduro. And Air Force planes would go there to Venezuela and come back here with a certain frequency. And what were they transporting? I don't know. I won't jump to any conclusions here or make accusations that I can't prove. But in one of those trips, the plane stopped and it was coming back from Cuba, stopped in Caracas, and Chavez told everyone to get off, including the Minister of Defense. And they made a raid on the plane. So, you know, I think I can say the corruption with the Workers' Party became to a huge level of intelligence and quantity. We see a lot more corruption today than we ever did. Nowadays, people only talk about billions of reais, like the Banco do Brasil pension fund. This pension fund reported a drop of around 15 billion reais last year only, you know? That's the level of corruption in Brazil. And it returned full steam with Lula's government because he accepts it. In other words, when Brazil doesn't have an example to follow, and this example is the main figure, the President of the Republic, the tendency is for everything to fall apart, as has been happening. I know there are people saying that maybe if Lula If we wait until the elections next year to take him out, they believe Brazil might reach a point where it's impossible to find the turning point. And it would be impossible to fix Brazil. We would be doomed. I believe anyway, I'm not going to give up on my country, even with all the risks I face, including 28 years in prison for a coup. I spoke to this guy from Israel, and he said, what kind of coup is this that not even the Mossad knew about? So as you can see, only Alexandre de Moraes and Lula believe that this coup happened. And what do they want? Well, if they exclude me from politics, Lula will manage to have a safe conduct for him in the future. Just like what happened when Biden gave to Fauci a preventive amnesty regarding COVID issues they had there. Here in Brazil, the preventive amnesty is to find a way to put me in jail.
Yeah, I mean, when I see the names, I see Sergio Cabral Filho, the former governor of Rio de Janeiro who got 400 years. I think he got some money for World Cup on the side, right? You hear stories about Flavio Dino. We talked about him earlier. There's a bunch of other names that you hear about the corruption.
Brazil, I'm so glad you're watching this. I want to tell you something here. Do you know what's the one thing tyrants or criminals in politics, in your government, you know what's the one thing they hate? Is for the people to have hope. It's been said, man and women can live 40 days without food, 4 days without water, 4 minutes without air, but only 4 seconds without hope. When I was in Brazil, we had dinner with Nicolas Ferreira. And while we're having dinner, we gave him a shirt and we took a picture together. It's called Future Looks Bright with Brazilian flag. I would love nothing more than to see thousands and thousands of people in Brazil to wear a shirt that says Future Looks Bright with your flag. Just for Brazil, we made these custom shirts for you. If you want to inject the spirit of hope in Brazil, go place 1 order, 2, 3, buy it for your peers, your family. Click on a link below or go to vtmerch.com and sport your Future Looks Bright shirt in Brazil. Let the dictators, let the tyrants get so angry the fact that you are optimistic about the future. If you enjoyed this video, you want to watch more videos like this, click here. And if you want to watch the entire podcast, click here.